The GTX 1650 Super was one of the best budget cards ever released by Nvidia. Now, it was significantly better than the ordinary GTX 1650, like miles better. However, like any budget card, it only came with 4 GB of VRAM. So, in 2026, is it time to upgrade our budget super card? And of course, because this is a budget card, we're going to compare it against the latest RTX budget card, which is the RTX 5050, which is double the VRAM. So that alone will give you an indication of its performance if we're in a VRAM limited scenario. For it to be considered an upgrade, we're going to be expecting at least a 50% performance bump. If it's less than that, like maybe about 20%, that's probably not a good idea. If it's double the performance, then obviously that's pretty good, and that's an automatic upgrade. We're gonna test both of these cards in a lot of games. We're gonna mix it with heavy games and competitive games, and we're gonna test it at 1080p, 1440p, and hypothetical 4K too. Well, it's not really hypothetical, but we're gonna test it on a real world scenario. And to keep it real, we're gonna just use our Ryzen 7600 because at least it's a good balance. It won't be too old and it won't be too fast, but it should just sit in the middle. Okay, let's do this. And let's start off with 1080p, and look at this one, boys. Arc Raiders, low settings, 1080p, and we're already getting more than double the performance, right? Decent FPS with our 1650 Super, but much better with our RTX 5050. Let's go with Cyberpunk 2077, ultra settings, and 166% better. There is an argument here that we are VRAM bottleneck by the VRAM, so you can see we are really pushing that VRAM limit in our GTX 1650 Super. Oblivion is another game that actually pushes the VRAM, and we can see why our RTX 5050 is just hammering it here, and our 1650 Super is just struggling. Now, we even enabled FSR in here just to compensate for our GTX 1650 Super, but yeah, we're pretty much struggling. We will see how this one turns out at 1440p. Battlefield 6 now, and once again, we've got the 5050 just crushing the 1650 Super. Let's try another game. Delta Force. On our walking benchmark, we're getting about more than 50% average FPS. How about on our firing benchmark? That's still pretty decent, right? 85% better performance compared to our GTX 1650 Super. Now, although you can still play with the 1650 Super on this one at 1080p, like I think that's still pretty valid with about like 140 FPS there. How about PUBG? When we are using DX11 enhanced API in here, we've got decent FPS with our 1650 Super, but it's much better with our RTX 5050. Let's move on to our competitive titles, and here we have Fortnite, and there's a little bit of lead there with our RTX 5050. Let's try another game, Valorant. And this one, there's actually not much gains. Well, there's actually no gains with our RTX 5050, so you could probably get away with the 1650 Super if you're just playing Valorant. Let's jump to our hero shooters, and here we got Apex Legends. Look at that one, boys. 120%, almost 100%, almost 120% better performance on our heavy action benchmark. On our static scenes, it's the same thing, right? 115% better, right? That's the night and day difference there. Let's go with Marvel Rivals, and this game's pretty heavy. And you can see why our 1650 Super is only getting about 46 FPS in here compared to the 100 plus FPS with our 5050. Let's go down to Helldivers 2 now. It's the same thing, right? The 5050 is just crushing it. On our stratagem benchmark, it's still like more than double in terms of performance, right? The lows are pretty good too. And let's go to Path of Exile 2. And this one, the gains are actually not that good. And lastly, we have World Tanks in here. And yes, you do get decent FPS with our 1650 Super, but it's much better with the 5050, okay? There's just no contest in here, right? You will get double the performance. All right, let's move on to 1440p now. And here we have Arc Raiders. Once again, we've got upscalers in here. And if you want to find out all the settings, I'm just going to throw it down at Patreon. Yes, there's a link here. Would really appreciate it if you join our Patreon. It's free. And once again, we've got double the performance here with our RTX 5050. We've got DLSS with our 5050 and only FSR quality with our 1650 Super. Now, let's go with Cyberpunk 2077. Now, wow, right? So you've got playable experience on the 5050. And we've got DLSS in here. And what? That's like console performance, right? 30 FPS. So it's pretty obvious. And Oblivion Remastered, yeah, nah, the 1650 Super doesn't run, right, at 4040p. Now we've got medium settings, and yeah, it just doesn't run. So yes, that's an automatic win, and we won't include that in our totals, but yes, just so you know. Moving on to our multiplayer shooters, and we've got Battlefield 6 in here. That's 140% beta, no question. Delta Force, the same thing. Now we are stretching that lead there, right? And we've got a firing benchmark, the same thing, right? 140% beta, and on PUBG, double the performance. Okay, so that's pretty obvious right there. And let's go to our competitive shooters, Fortnite performance mode, and there you go, right? We are now pushing it with our 5050. We're now getting 80% better performance compared to the 1650 Super. And on Valorant, here you go, right? This is what the small bump in performance that we're looking for. Although, if you're playing Valorant, you can still get away with our 1650 Super. You do get a slight bump with a 5050, but it's not very, like, it's not worth it if you're just playing Valorant. All right, heavy action benchmark now in Apex Legends, and boom, yeah, now that's pretty bad for the 1650 Super. Obviously, it's not designed for 1440p. We are just pushing it here, but you can see that the 5050 gives you that opportunity to try 1440p with some games, right? Marvel Rivals now, and yes, it's quite night and day difference. And we go back to Helldivers 2, and it's pretty good. And in World of Tanks, yeah, now 120% beta for RTX 5050. So that's pretty much bloodbath, right? Okay, lastly, we have 4K, and we are using realistic settings in here. Now, to be honest, both of these guys are not designed for 4K, but we just want to do this for science. And we've got Arc Raiders in here. 1650 Super can perform 4K with realistic settings like low settings, FSR performance, and you can set about like 48 FPS while you're getting much higher FPS with our 5050, and definitely much better video quality too with DLSS, right? When we go to Cyberpunk 2077, and we did set the settings in here to just low and upscalers at performance, you're still getting better performance with the 5050. It's not as good, but you know, it's there, right? 70 FPS, and you can play this on your 4K screen if you want to. And we've got PUBG in here. It's a slower paced game, but you can still play this one with the 5050. I wouldn't recommend this one. Probably just go with 1440p. Okay, but I just want to put this out here just to see if, you know, it's playable. And lastly, we have World of Tanks in here. Now we just set it up to medium settings just to make sure that it's not stressing the cat too much, right? So we're getting about 130, 150 with a 5050, while you're just getting that like micro stutters, or well, actually a stuttering experience with our 1650 Super. It can do 4K, but you're better off with the 5050 if you're gonna do that, right? One more thing, let's talk about power consumption. So although the RTX 5050 is an efficient card, like it only sips a little bit of power compared to other modern cards, it's still consuming 130 watts, right? Whereas the GTX 1650 Super is only using 100 watts. Now, the difference is obviously in the performance. So even though it is using 30 watts more, it is also outputting more performance. Therefore, the 5050 is much more efficient because efficiency is based off performance and energy. Let's look at the numbers overall at 1080p. If you're upgrading from the 1650 Super to the RTX 5050, you're going to get 112% better average FPS. And in terms of the 1% lows, that's double. And the 0.1% lows, that's 141% gain. So that's a huge gain, like at least double for everything if you're coming from the 1650 Super. The biggest gains are in Oblivion, Battlefield 6, Cyberpunk, and even Marvel Rivals, especially on the lows with Marvel Rivals, right? And this is probably due to the VRAM limitation, right? With only 4 GB of VRAM, yes, you're gonna be bottleneck on that one. There is one game that doesn't have any improvement at all, and that's a Valorant, so you're okay. If you're just gonna play Valorant, you're like, going for that gold or silver or all of that, you're fine. In terms of 1440p, you will gain 112% in terms of average FPS if you're going to be jumping from the 1650 Super to the RTX 5050. In terms of 1% loss, that's 109%, and 0.1% loss, it's 112%. So across the board, it's a pretty big bump, especially in Cyberpunk, wherein you get the biggest gains, and Oblivion just doesn't run with our 1650 Super. Okay, 4K, theoretical 4K, okay. Average FPS, you will get double. 1% lows, that's 93% beta, and 0.1% lows, that's 180% beta. The lead sounds pretty good, but we have to be realistic that you probably wouldn't play any of these guys at 4K. But for the RTX 5050, it can, if you're just being realistic. All right, let's look at pricing. Now, pricing is pretty bad right now. The RTX 5050 is $350 new. I don't know how we got here. Okay, it's pretty bad. And if you're gonna sell your GTX 1650 Super, it's only $100 in the used market. So I guess it's a question of what you want to play, right? So the 1650 Super is definitely showing its age, especially in a lot of the heavier games. You can still get away on the competitive games if you set your settings right, but the jump to the RTX 5050 is definitely worth it. Like if we take out the price out of the question, right? We're just gonna look at the performance of both guys. Obviously, I would recommend that you just upgrade later on. Hopefully prices would drop, but I don't know, man. I don't know when this is going to happen, okay? Hopefully you're just watching this in a future video, because like my videos don't get pushed anyway. I'm a small creator. Patreon, if you want to support me, thank you. And yes, speaking of budget cards, we also did a test on our last video with our AMD RX 6600 XT. Now that card was one of the best budget cards as well. With that card, we tested it out against NVIDIA's 5060. So if you don't want to see that, you might as well just click this here. Click.